The division is ours.
Oh
I don't
gosh.
care what Houston did yesterday. They're going to go get their Letterman jackets again. The Indianapolis Colts are 2-6 against the Titans since Pat McAfee came up here and did his wrestling announcement. And the Jacksonville Jaguars, they haven't had back-to-back winning seasons since I was a senior in high school.
What's up, Titans fans, and welcome to another edition of Titans Global Podcast. I am your host, Maximus Titan Fan. With me, as always, is my good buddy, Link. Oh, you are...
There we go. Got me now?
Yep.
Hey, good to be here, guys. It's been a while. Good to be back. As always, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to comment. The show is for you guys. We want you to be involved. We want you to join the chat, and we'll get right into it.
Absolutely. And with us tonight is a very special guest, somebody I've actually been wanting to get on the show for a long time, Mr. Mike Herndon. Thank you for joining us tonight, brother.
Absolutely, man. I'm happy to be here, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and if you guys aren't following this guy, you gotta get on Twitter, follow the X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Follow the guy, check him out. He is also on paulkuharski.com. As far as I know, you're the only other person other than Paul to contribute to that site, correct?
No, there's actually two others. There's Blake Bedingfield, the former director of college scouting for the Titans, who writes generally during the season a couple times a week, kind of scouting-based articles. And then there's also Jake Brownard, I believe is his last name, with more of an analytics bent to his analysis there. So there's, I think, four of us total now writing over there.
Oh, I did not know that. Awesome, though. Congratulations to all of you, man, because anybody who works directly with Paul, I've had him on the show, a really big fan of him. So,
yeah, he's a good guy. Often misunderstood among the fan base.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, even me, I mean, when I had him on the show afterwards, I was like, man, he was a lot nicer than I thought he was going to be.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, everybody gets that kind of persona, but yeah, Paul's a really good guy.
He is. He's got the gruff northern, affect and everything, but that's all just a part of it. He's a really nice guy personally.
Right on. Well, guys, if you're joining us tonight, thank you. We're going to talk about the free agents who, basically for me, I'm going to talk about who I would let walk, who I would re-sign, and who I would cut. And I'm not going to go into crazy detail because that is too much to do, and that would take up way too much of your time, and you really don't care that much anyway. Let's be honest. Then we're going to grade the special teams. That's kind of almost annoying for me, but we have to do it. And talk a little bit about coaches if we have time, and if we have extra time, Pro Bowl crap, but probably not. So let's get down to it. Free agents. I think there's 23 or 27 pending free agents.
Yeah, somewhere around that. Just under 30, the easiest way to put it. The majority of those are unrestricted. So, for me, and I'll let you kind of bust right into it where you want to start. But looking at the list, there's not a lot of guys that I would feel comfortable signing, especially to long-term contracts. But yeah, we'll get into it, kind of see what you guys think.
Yeah, I'll make it kind of quick and easy. For me, I would re-sign Azeez Al-Shaair, even though he's projected to make almost $12 million a year at the high end. Sean Murphy-Bunting is projected around 5.2. Nick Folk, I would re-sign him. He was great for us this year. 2.6 million is his high end. Morgan Cox is a very underrated player that even though he's 37, I think he's going to turn 38 next year, but I'd still see him as someone who can play long snapper at a high level. So I don't see why I wouldn't re-sign him. And my two surprises would be, I guess, Kayvon Wallace and Edmonds, maybe. It depends on how much Edmonds get. There was a crazy radical difference in between his low and high number, so it really just depends on how much money he wants. And those are my re-signs.
Yeah, I agree with that. The majority of those I agree with. I mean, you've got Danico Autry. I mean, he was, even though he's a little bit older for his position, I mean, he was tied for 12th in the NFL for sacks. So he's still a productive player, especially this year on this team. I mean, Azeez, it's kind of tough to argue when, he led the team in total tackles and he didn't miss any time this year. For me, that's kind of a given. I know we talked about it last week, possibly finding a good fit for him at that linebacker position, kind of giving him another character that he can build off of. But I do think he can be successful next year. One of the big ones for me, looking at Chris Moore and NWI, who are both unrestricted free agents, when you compare those two guys, I mean, the metrics are pretty similar. I do think that just personally, Chris Moore, he does give you that big playability. But NWI, what he's been able to do kind of consistently for this team, just being able to show up, be what's really been a third, if not a second wide receiver on this team. He's came up in some big moments. He's made some big catches. And again, he's just that consistency. So if it's between those two guys for me, I think I'm sticking with NWI. And then the big no for me, there's a lot of guys I'd say no, but the big no for me has to be Christian Fulton. I mean, you've got a new defensive back coach coming in, and this guy's just showed time and time again that he's a complete liability on this team. But I'll get Mike's perspective and see kind of what he thinks as far as these free agents go.
Yeah, I think I largely agree with you guys. I mean, I think Azeez is a clear bring back out of that group. I like the idea of bringing back Kayvon Wallace, even though I wouldn't want him necessarily being a starter. I'd be perfectly fine with him being like your third or fourth guy in that safety rotation. I think he showed something towards the end of the year. I'm kind of out on bringing back Sean Murphy-Bunting. I think he seems like a good guy. I'm just not sure about his coverage ability. He's a good tackler. He does a lot of the other things that you want a cornerback to do, but I want a coverage guy first. And I just think that secondary struggled so much over the last 2 years. I think they just need fresh blood in there, and that means Fulton and Sean Murphy-Bunting need to go. I think McCreary has been a good player, and I think you want to build around him. And the safeties, I think Amani Hooker's still pretty good, but I think you want to bring in a lot of fresh blood in that secondary and try to jumpstart that group. And also think having Denard Wilson as the defensive coordinator will probably help that group as well, because he's a defensive backs focused guy and has had really good results everywhere he's been with that position group. So that being said, I would probably rather lean towards not bringing back most of the corners that they had last year. A couple guys that you guys did not mention that I might actually consider bringing back: Chris Hubbard, older guy, but wouldn't mind him being in the mix at right tackle, depending on what else they do. Obviously, Nicholas Petit-Frere, Dylan Radins, they've got other players who could be candidates for that job. But Hubbard played pretty well before he got hurt this season, and I wouldn't mind him being a part of the offensive line, at least to go to camp, right? Like, I mean, there's no guarantee he makes the team, but to bring him to camp, I wouldn't be opposed to that.
I like that idea. I actually mentioned that when he got injured. I thought he played really well. He had good high scores, even though I don't always agree with PFF. They do a decent job of grading the people out there. So I do look at it as input, but I thought he did really well. And yeah, I would give him another contract, especially if it was on the low end.
Let me ask you guys this while we're kind of on the offensive line subject. When it comes to, so you've got Corey Levin, he's going to be an unrestricted free agent this year, and you've also got Aaron Brewer. Are there either one of those guys that you're looking to bring back, even if it is just in a backup role, just somebody who kind of knows the offense, who kind of knows the scheme a little bit? And I know that scheme's probably going to change, especially with Callahan, bringing in his dad. I know we're going to see a completely different offensive line next year. But are either one of those guys that you're looking at and thinking, maybe I would be okay with bringing them back?
I
I'll
guess
let
for
you go
me,
ahead.
yeah, I guess for me, I would say Brewer does some things well. Like I mean, I don't think he's a starting center on a good team. Um, but he does some things well. Like in the run game, he is a weapon. And if you had him as a backup, I think that's a pretty high quality backup kind of player to be able to throw into the mix if your starting center went down. Obviously he's, got all the intangibles and stuff like that too, and would kind of give you, some holdover, some leadership in that group, that kind of thing. So I wouldn't mind him being back, but he absolutely has to have competition, whether it be in the form of a, highly drafted rookie or a veteran center that they bring in. So I wouldn't mind Brewer back, but I think that's obviously a spot that they have to upgrade this offseason.
Yeah, for me, Brewer's just a no. And the only reason I say that is because, I really had high expectations for him at center. And that's simply because, not last year, but the year before that, when they actually did use him at center, not at left guard, he was decent. He had decent numbers. He had decent grades. It wasn't bad. But this year, it just showed for me that he's a little undersized. What they say is true. Now, he does, like you said, he gets great leverage in the running game. He actually does really well in that, getting to the second level and all that stuff. But I'm not a huge fan of him overall as a player. I think if Rand said, all right, well, you got to choose one, give me which one do you want? I guess I'd rather have Levin just because of his size. And if I need to, I can slide him out to guard. So a little bit more versatility, I guess. I don't know. And probably cheaper too. I don't know. It's just my thoughts.
And
Yeah,
I will
fair
say
enough.
Callahan's always leaned towards bigger offensive linemen too. So I'm not sure he'll be a huge fan of Brewer just with the size limitations that he does have.
Yeah, and to kind of build on that, I think we're starting to see kind of the plan come together of what this offense is going to be next year, at least what they want to start transitioning to. And we talked about Brewer in the run game, but I really feel like this is going to start to transition to a pass first offense. And for me, I think I'm kind of with Max on this one. I think I'm kind of out on Brewer at this point, just based on the size thing. And I know he's got the agility and he does have some potential, but again, just to agree with both your guys' point, I do think there has to be some competition going into the offseason for sure.
Yeah, so the only other, I guess, shocking person that I would just let walk and not even think about re-signing, that a lot of people are giving me gruff about anyway, is Chris Moore. I know he has a really good yard per average, I guess, which is the stat I like to bring up the most in running backs and wide receivers. So, no hate there. Just saying, for me, I don't like any of our wide receivers, to be honest. If I could, I would trade Traylon Burks for, if somebody would give me a third round pick, I would snap him going so fast. But I'm just really not a huge fan of any of our wide receivers. I think we need a fresh start at that spot. Not maybe a complete fresh start, but at least, get something going. I would probably keep maybe some names that pop out. Kearis Jackson. He impressed me a little bit with his speed. I don't really know if he's got anything, but I might keep that guy. Other than that, man, I don't really care about keeping any of our wide receivers. Just my personal preference.
Yeah, again, if it comes down to NWI versus Chris Moore, I'm kind of on the NWI side of things. I do think that with Hopkins and what you've got in him, I think that you do need to bring in somebody who can be a solid number two, who can kind of take some pressure off of him. And you're going into this season coming up with a new wide receivers coach who's had a lot of success, and he's been with some big names in the league. So again, it's tough to talk about who they're going to go for in free agency right now. But I do think you need a solid number two. And outside of DeAndre Hopkins, I'm kind of with you. I mean, I think there's some younger names on the roster that could possibly step up and find some success. Traylon's a tough one for me because, you spend the draft capital on him and you expect him not necessarily to be A.J. Brown, but that was A.J. Brown's replacement. I mean, it just was. And with that not panning out and not working out the way everybody expected, and I'm not completely out on him yet, but I don't have a lot of hope. So yeah, I agree. Other than DeAndre Hopkins, I think this wide receiver group could use a fresh start.
Yeah, totally agree. Anything you want to add to that, Mike?
No, I would agree on the wide receivers. I mean, like NWI, like somebody has to be the fourth or fifth wide receiver. Like you're not going to get, a superstar that's going to come sign here to be your fourth or fifth guy, right? So you're going to have somebody who's going to do the dirty work. I think Colton Dowell's injury kind of throws some of that into flux too, because he's likely not going to be ready to start the season next year, or if he is, it'll probably be a little bit limited, as we've seen with countless guys coming back from ACLs over the past few seasons. But I think Moore or NWI, if you had them as your fifth guy who's like a special teams contributor mostly, and then like if you needed to stick them in because of injuries, they're not going to kill you as a wide receiver. I'm perfectly fine with those guys being a part of camp, and then you hope someone like a Curious Jackson or someone else comes up and beats him out for the job. Like, I mean, some of those guys that are going to be on the bubble, you bring them into camp and they give you a floor for what that spot could be, and then you hope somebody else with a higher ceiling exceeds that floor and bumps them out of the job. So, but I agree. I'm not holding out a ton of hope for Treylon Burks, and I was a big Treylon Burks fan coming out. I think he's lost total confidence in himself. Maybe a new coaching staff can pull that back out of him and put him in a better mindset. Maybe a healthy off season can help that as well. But man, that guy needs something to jumpstart, and I just don't know that he's going to get there. So I think the Titans have to approach the offseason as if he's not, that he's nothing. Right. And then same for Adam Humphries, or not Adam Humphries, Kyle Phillips.
Similar
player. Transporting myself back in time. But same for Kyle Phillips. You got to pretend like he's not going to do anything, or that he's not a part of the roster to me. Like, go fill out your wide receivers as if they're not there and hope that they prove you wrong.
Yep. Yes, man. You said it right there. The thing about Treylon Burks, a lot of people give me a lot of grief online for that. They think I hate him or something. I don't. I wish he would succeed. I would love to see him come out and have a breakout year under Callahan, but he was a first-round draft pick. Even if you don't want to look at him as A.J. Brown's replacement, he's a first-round wide receiver, and he has not lived up to the potential of a first-round wide receiver. And in my opinion, so far, he's a bust. Unless he does have a good season this year and sticks with us. I don't know.
Yeah, and somebody said it in the comments. I mean, this is a make or break year for him. And I mean, he's not just putting together film for the Titans. He's putting together film for another team in the NFL if it doesn't happen to work out. But again, I think he still has the ceiling. I think the metrics are there. We've seen him make plays. He's got the size. We've seen the hands. I still think it's possible that he can make it work. It's just going to be a huge offseason for him. I mean, the conditioning has to get better. The confidence has to get better. The consistency has to get better, because I think the biggest downfall for him so far is just not being able to get on the field. I mean, it's tough as a wide receiver when you're not out there each week catching balls. I mean, it is what it is. So if he can get the conditioning right, if he can get a little bit healthier, I think that the success could be there. But yeah, just big off season for him. I'm going to have to see it happen.
All right. And the final thing I want to talk about is just some cuts that I would make personally. Maybe not everybody would. Some of them, or at least one of them's out of hate. Andre Dillard, dude, we lose $7.7 million in dead money if we cut him and only gain like 2.8, I think it is. Don't care. I'd still cut him. I just, man, I don't know. Maybe not, but I just hate. Anyway, a surprising one that even surprised me, and the only reason I did it was looking over the numbers and looking over the stats, what I thought he should be doing, is Elijah Molden. I would cut him. He only counts 210,000 against the cap, $3 million we gain. Malik Willis, it's not anything against Willis. It's actually for Willis because he's not. His and Levis's games are completely separate. And honestly, if he's going to succeed in the NFL, he needs to go somewhere else because it's not going to be as our backup. The other two were Quentin Bohanna and Garrett Wallow and Trey Avery, obviously. There's like 10 undrafted free agents I would have let go and saved like $9 million. I don't know. I'm just turning over the roster because I don't like the undrafted free agent roster we had with Mike Vrabel last year. We finally have some money. We can get rid of some of these guys, make some money back on the cap that we spent last year. I just think it's a good idea to just let some of those guys go and get that money back in our cap so we can use it on people we really want.
I will say this, and I'm probably going to regret saying it, and I'm probably going to look back at this and can't believe that I said it. You have a legendary offensive coach right now coming in with Bill Callahan. I would almost take Andre Dillard into training camp and just see if there's any improvement there. And I'm not saying start him. I'm not saying play him. I want to see these guys in training camp with a new coaching staff who actually schemes up some blocking patterns and maybe just see where it goes. And especially with losing, all that dead cap space and taking the hit like that, for me, and again, I'm not supporting Andre Dillard, but I am saying take him into training camp, let him get a legendary coach behind him to kind of show him some things, teach him some things, build up some schemes, and just see where it goes. And again, I'm probably going to regret this, but that's kind of where I'm at with it right now.
Yeah, I'm out on Dillard too. I would get rid of him. My biggest problem with Dillard is that it's not just the bad play, but I think he's soft. I just think he's soft. And I don't think, as good as Bill Callahan is, I don't think he can coach the soft out of him at 28 years old or whatever he is now. If you don't have a dog in you at 28, you're not going to have one in you at 29, So that's kind of where I'm at with Dillard. I'd get him off the roster because there's other guys. I'd rather Callahan spend more time with Jalen Duncan, with Nicholas Petit-Frere, with Dylan Radins, like all these guys that have at least shown some fight. I felt like Dillard he's just too soft, and I just don't think it's going to happen. Although physically talented, without any doubt. So I am, I'm with you as far as getting rid of Dillard. And I think the Molden one is interesting because, while I like Molden, feel like he's kind of a playmaker, I also feel like he doesn't really have a role in the NFL. I think he's too slow to play corner. He's too small to play safety. It's just kind of an odd fit. So that's a pretty big number for him to be sitting on for a guy that's really going to be a backup most likely. So I wouldn't mind getting rid of that. And honestly, I've been accused of being a Daniel Brunskill hater, and I will say that Brunskill has, he's the definition of replacement level player, right? He's gonna do the job. He tries hard, he's smart, all the stuff like that. But to me, he's Josh Klein. He's the same guy. He's not very good. He's not going to make your line better for sure. He's just going to kind of be a guy that is hopefully your worst player on the offensive line. And I'd rather have the $3.3 million that they could go spend on someone with maybe a little bit more upside than that, and let Callahan coach them up again. I just think there's going to be players that they can plug in on this offensive line that are better than Daniel Brunskill next year. So I'd be fine with going ahead and jettisoning him.
Yeah, man, I love that. Soft. There's not a better descriptive word that I could use for Andre Dillard than soft. That is perfect.
He's a big softy, though. That's a big softy.
Big teddy bear.
He does play soft, though. He plays like a big weenie or something. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not going to bash on Andre Dillard.
That's fair.
I'll try not to anyway, and I'm sorry. If you didn't hear your name tonight and you play for the Tennessee Titans, that means I don't care. That means I could care less if they keep you or trade you or whatever. Except you did mention Autry. That one's tough for me, man. His market value is a little more than I'd like to pay for him, but man, he really showed up this year when we needed him to, even with the absence of Jeffrey Simmons. So but he's also 36. I don't know. That one I wrestled with really hard before the show. I really couldn't come up with a good answer on that. So I would just
I'll,
delegate.
I'll be honest. I think Autry is going to end up making the decision that the Titan, he's not going to be a Titan next year. Because to me, like, I mean, he was a guy that got along with Vrabel, obviously Terrell Williams. Those guys are gone now. The Titans, is as much as there's a lot of excitement around the team right now, and I do think they could be better next year. They're not going to be a Super Bowl contender.
Correct.
I think he's going to have opportunities to go to better teams. And maybe, if he wanted to go follow Terrell Williams to where did he end up? Detroit. If he wanted to follow Terrell Williams to Detroit, I'm sure there will be an availability to do that. That's where I would go if I was him. But I think he's going to choose to go elsewhere. I don't think it's going to be the Titans' choice as to whether or not to bring him back, to be honest with you.
So let me ask this: while you're on the subject of players' decisions and chasing Super Bowls, where are we at with Derrick Henry? Do you think the coaching changeover makes it more likely, less likely, or about the same as far as Derrick Henry taking enough less money? Because we know that Spears is going to be the feature back. I mean, I don't think that's the doubt in anybody's mind. But is this new coaching staff looking at Henry like he's still a red zone threat? He's still a third down threat. He's still going to get his touchdowns. I mean, does this coaching hire change anything as far as Derrick Henry is concerned?
I mean, I think them firing Vrabel makes it less likely that he's back. Because again, like Autry, I think Henry was very much a Vrabel guy, and obviously, like, not everybody in the locker room was, but Henry was. And I think if you heard his comments on Bussin' with the Boys about the locker room and it not feeling the same, to me, that's almost him saying, like, I'm not going to be back. Like, because it's not the same franchise that it has been. The familiarity factor is not there. And I mean, I'm sure he would love to finish his career in the same place he started it. And I do think Nashville means something to him and the franchise means something to him. But I don't know. For him to, like, come back to be Tajay Spears' backup, I just don't think it's going to happen. I think he's going to end up, as much as I hate to say it, I could see him ended up in Baltimore with the Ravens, trying to chase a Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson, who he's friends with, and a team that needs a feature back. He would be an upgrade over Gus Edwards, certainly. So I think he's going to end up with a shot to get more carries and a bigger role elsewhere than what he will here. And it'll be sad to see him in a different uniform, but honestly, with what his timeline is and what the Titans' new timeline is with this, whole changeover with Will Levis and the new coaching staff and new direction and all that, they just don't line up anymore. And I don't think it makes sense for either side.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and there's already the void years that they put on the contracts for the next 2 years. Somebody brought it up. It might have been Paul that brought it up. But you're starting off already in the hole. I mean, I know you're still starting off in the hole whether you pay somebody else, but do you really have to pay somebody else Derrick Henry money to get the level of play we're going to get out of a backup Derrick Henry? Hear me out. I'm not bashing on Derrick Henry. I'm just saying, if we're not going to use him like Derrick Henry, the feature back, why pay him like Derrick Henry, the feature back? That's where we come into problems. It's not so much that we don't want Derrick Henry. It's that we don't want to pay Derrick Henry what he's actually worth. And that stinks for us. It stinks for him. I'm sure everybody would love him to, like you said, retire as a Titan. I know I would, but it's just not in the cards, man. I hate that, but that's just the way it is. I have a Derrick Henry jersey. It's like one of 5 that I actually bought. And you know how expensive jerseys are.
Yeah, no, and I agree with all those points. And for me, it was one of those things where, as much as I hate to say it, when the stuff with Jonathan Taylor happened and Derrick Henry came out in support of that, of, we have to pay running backs and these guys are primetime NFL players. And I agree with him. I think it's important to have a good running back on the roster. But I'm with you. I don't want to say it's going to come down to money, but I don't think that he's prepared to take less money for a worse team, if that makes sense. So yeah, I agree with the points. Just pure curiosity, because I know it's when he leaves. I mean, it's going to be a mourning in Nashville. It's going to be sad.
Absolutely.
But yeah. So credit to him, and I hope he finds success. But I'm with you guys. I'm not sure that success is going to be found here.
Yeah, and that's really sad. But anyway, moving on to something else that's sad, or whatever. Special teams. We're gonna grade the special teams. All right, so my quick rundown of the special teams. I'll make it quick. Morgan Cox is solid. I already said that. Even at 37, I'd probably re-sign him to another contract, at least 1 year. Let him. It's hard to find a good long snapper, man, especially one that keys in with your guys. Like Nick Folk just walked in here and just started taking snaps from him, and Ryan Stonehouse had the same thing. But anyway, Nick Folk, I already said it was amazing for us this year. Only missed 1 field goal and 2 extra points out of the entire season. Amassed 115 points and punted twice for us and had a 40.1 yard average, which I know doesn't sound amazing, but it is the last average that Brett Kern had with us his last year. So you got to give him a little bit of credit. Also, Ryan Stonehouse, man, what a dude, man. That guy is just sick. 53.1 yard per punt. That's exactly what he had last year. He was exactly on pace to have another Pro Bowl season, best in the league season, except something changed majorly in his stat lines from 22. In 2022, he had 33.3% inside the 20-yard line. This year, 52.8. My boy's coming up, man. He's figuring out how to get him laid in there just like Kern used to for us, only he can also boot it really far. Like 71 yards was his long, I think, this season. So
74. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Praise be the kickers on the Titans team and the long snapper. That is the best part of our special teams. I gave both our kickers an A, and I gave our long snapper an A-. Our returners just stunk. So they brought the average grade down to a B. I'm not even really going to talk about them, but you guys can. What do y'all think?
Yeah, so for me, I think Folk was probably the most consistent part of this offense all year, if I'm being honest. But yeah, 29 of 30, 9 of 9 from 20 to 29, 9 of 9 from 30 to 39, 6 of 6, 40 to 49, and then that one miss was the 50 plus. The only thing for me was the extra points, and one of those missed extra points, I don't want to completely put it on him because he had a different holder. I mean, we all know what happened there. So that was the one kind of knock for me. But as far as the field goals go, again, probably the most consistent thing on this offense and setting the franchise. Now it's only one season, but setting the franchise record of 10 plus kicks for accuracy for field goal percentage. So, good for him. I think he had a good year. I think he's still going to be a huge part of this offense come next year. And then to move to Stonehouse, I mean, yeah, people kind of forget like this guy's coming back. And I've never been a punter. I don't know how much this injury may affect him mentally, physically. I don't know. But I mean, if he can do what he was doing prior to the injury, I mean, this, like you said, he's a dude. But yeah, 28 punts inside the 20 for me was huge. And then just being able to bang at that 74 yards. I mean, whatever it is, he's got it. So yeah, I mean, between the two kickers, I'm with you. I mean, I got to give those guys an A. When it comes to overall, what I didn't like, I mean, your punt return average was 11.3. That was ninth in the NFL. But you had 3 fumbles. So they got to clean some of that up. I don't know that any of the guys that were returning punts this year, I mean, Garrett had some success. Kinsey, not so much. Karis Jackson, I think he's got potential, but just didn't seem like he's got the explosiveness to be a weapon in the punt return game. I'd like to see them find a specialist. That would be big for me. And then, you talk about the kick returns. They were 25th in the kick return average. Again, I feel like you need to find a specialist for that position who can be a weapon, who can be a threat. We need some people to start taking some stuff to the house. I mean, I want to see this offense turn explosive, and your offense starts with the kick returns and the punt returns. So if we could find somebody to fill that role and have some success, I think this will be a lot better offense come next year.
Yeah, I'm right in line with all of you guys. Kicker, punter, great. Morgan Cox, great. I mean, when's the last time anybody said anything about a bad snap on a Titans punter kick, right? I mean, it just doesn't happen anymore. So I think Morgan Cox has entered that phase of his career where, like, as long the conversation with the Titans should just be, hey, do you want to play another year?
Okay.
And if yes, then okay, we'll give you we'll give you a little bit of a raise and you can stick around. So I think he should be back. I think they all should be back, frankly. And then they do have to find returners, because I thought Tajay Spears was okay as a kick returner, but you don't want him to be your kick returner if he's going to be your feature back next year, which he is going to be. So you need another kick returner. Kyrus Jackson could probably do both return jobs. And I thought in preseason and what little we saw of him in the regular season, I thought he showed some promise, and he does have a little bit of juice that, I'd be interested to see more of that. And then they need to kind of revamp some of their, coverage units and things like that too. I mean, it wasn't terrible last year, but it wasn't great either. It's been a long time since they've really felt like they had a big advantage in that phase of the game, and really throughout the entire Ackerman era, they just never created an advantage at all. At best, they were, not causing problems, but sometimes they were. So they need to be better in all units. But I think the specialists are pretty good.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And again, you go back to last year, you had Vrabel, and his whole message was, it felt like every game was going to be a field position battle, but you didn't have the guys to make it a successful field position battle. So I'm with you on all those points. I feel like you need some role players who can fill some of those positions.
Look, man, when I was doing my pre-season or before the season shows, and I was talking about punt returns and kick returns, literally the only thing I was saying was just catch the ball. Just catch the ball. I don't care what you do, how many yards you get, just catch the ball. And when that is your standard, that's a bad sign. I had like lulled myself into this sense that our special teams was just going to be terrible no matter what. So just catch the ball and just, secure things. Don't mess up, like Mike said. And it still did. That was the crazy part about it. They were still messing up, even though that emphasis was there. I mean, last year, at the end of last year, we were putting Robert Woods, who was technically our number one receiver, out to catch the ball because these fools could not just hang on to the ball.
Yep.
They cleaned that up a little bit this year, but they still, Eric Garrard, there was a couple just really head-scratching moments, I'll call it.
Miami, yeah.
Head-scratching moments. And, I don't know, man. The blocking, the coverage, Ackerman just, oh, man. The firing couldn't have come at a worse time, too. Right after Stonehouse ended his season with that injury. It took that for us to fire Stonehouse. That's the not going to talk about it. Not going to talk about Vrabel and his stubbornness and all that stuff, because that's just another day. Maybe never. Since we're talking about coaches, though, we'll just slip a little bit of this in. I'm going to be honest here. I don't really know a whole lot about other coaches, and I really hold judgment until I see them perform. I was excited about the Callahan. I might have overhyped that a little bit. I don't think I did. Maybe it was just me just so happy to see some kind of a change, some kind of a new direction. But some of his hires really got me excited. Of course, his dad, Bill Callahan. I think we all kind of knew that was coming, as long as the Browns didn't try to block it or anything, which sweetly they did not. So I'm really excited about that one. And another big one, you mentioned it earlier, Denard Wilson coming over from the Ravens, defensive back as our defensive coordinator. He was the defensive back coach for the Ravens, who actually had really good numbers in the defensive back. And we really thought he was going to take over as defensive coordinator for them since Mike, can't remember his Tolbert?
McDonald.
McDonald, thank you. There were so many names that, the Titans really did a great job of at least giving everybody an interview chance, not like in past years where they would just hire the second, third person that came in their office. I feel like they really did a good search on this one, so hats off to everybody, except the only one I'm really questioning is the offensive coordinator, and maybe that's because Bill Callahan's going to call the plays, and it really doesn't matter anyway. I know they said that at the the high school they used to work together at, he really just kind of like observed what was happening in the offense and relayed that stuff to Bill Callahan so he could call the plays better or something like that. And if that's what's going on, whatever. But apparently he worked under Bill Callahan at Nebraska also and did a great job there. So the only thing that kills me is it comes from the Jags. But, maybe if it hurts the Jags, that's a good thing. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know that much about the coaches. What do y'all think?
Here's my thing. I actually love this offensive coordinator hire. I'm going to be honest. I like Nick Holtz. Coming in from Jacksonville, he was the pass game coordinator. We've seen here's what I like about these coaching hires. They are taking steps to develop Will Levis at all costs. I mean, this is a guy he's worked with Trevor Lawrence. He worked with Andrew Luck when he was at Stanford for a little stint there. As an assistant QB coach, I think it was. So what it tells me is they're moving in a direction where we want to develop Will Levis. We want to move to a pass-first offense, and I feel like that's what's going to be successful in the NFL. Another big one for me that stuck out, I feel pretty good about the wide receiver coaching hire. I think, is it Tyke Tolbert? Am I pronouncing that right? Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, this is a guy, he's worked with Anquan Bolden. He's worked with Lee Evans, Demaryius Thomas. And I mean, he's coming off a year where DJ Moore had his best season of his career. So I think that was a big hire. Again, it just speaks volumes to we want to move to that pass first offense. So those were the two biggest ones for me. And then on the defensive side, I like the Frank Bush hire as the linebacker coach. Coming out of Atlanta, the two starting middle linebackers in Atlanta, which is where I feel like the Titans really need a lot of work. Again, we talked about Azeez. We need to find him kind of another fit where they can have success. But your two starting middle linebackers, they combined for 232 total tackles, 6 sacks, 18 tackles for loss, and 3 forced fumbles. I mean, so it shows he's going to scheme these guys. And I like that one. I mean, that's a big one for me. And then the other one that I didn't really touch on, the DB coach, Steven Jackson, he's returning to the Titans. Some people might have kind of a bad taste in their mouth from that 2016, 2017 season. I think they were 30th in pass yards allowed that year, but he's moved on from that. He's found some success. Atlanta this last year, they were 8th in pass yards allowed per game. So I think that's going to be an interesting one, especially with having, like we talked about, a lot of new DBs coming in, a lot of new faces in that group. But yeah, for me, I think Callahan's really going in the right direction here. He's going to defend the pass and he's going to pass the ball. And that's something that I feel like we haven't seen in this game plan and in this offense in a long time.
Yeah, and I'd say I'm excited about that as well. The general direction of the team, I think, prioritizing the passing game finally. And like you said, on both sides of the ball, they hire a passing game coordinator as the offensive coordinator. They hire a defensive backs coach as the defensive coordinator. I also think one of the interesting things about the coaching hires, Brian Callahan's 39 years old, Nick Holtz 39 years old, Denard Wilson is 41 years old. But then you go to the position coaches, and Steve Jackson's 54, I think. Tyke Tolbert's 56. Mm-hmm. Frank Bush is 61, and then Bill Callahan's 67. So they've got a lot of experience at the position coach level so far, but not a lot of experience at the coordinator level. So it's kind of an interesting mix because like the young guys are in charge here. But I think it could work, right? Like, I mean, you need to have some guys with experience and the skins on the wall at some point in the organization, but having the maybe younger, more, forward-thinking coaches leading the way and setting the agenda is not a bad thing. And look, it also helps when you have one of the best, if not the best, offensive line coach of all time as your dad that you can bring into the staff. Because like Bill Callahan is the closest thing to a magician that there is in the NFL. I mean, he took a guy, Wyatt Teller, who was like cut by the Bills. And he shows up with the Browns and has one season where he's not very good, and then Bill Callahan arrives and he has ripped off 3 straight Pro Bowl seasons, gets second team All Pro Bowl votes. They had their current center, Ethan Pocic. They brought in from Seattle. Seattle, he was like a backup, couldn't really get into the starting lineup in Seattle. He comes to Cleveland. He's great. He's had a great season. He is a miracle worker. I mean, that Paul Kaharski, not to pump up the site too much here, but Paul wrote today, he talked to the agent for a guy named Jalti Froholt, who is currently the starting center for the Cardinals, and he had been released and was having trouble sticking in the NFL. And the agent said he literally told his client, he was like, we're going to get you to the Browns. And he's like, I'm going to sell you to the Browns. You're going to go there. You're going to be developed, and then you'll get yourself a starting job. And so that's exactly what happened. He went to the Browns. He didn't even really play for the Browns. He just developed for a year behind the guys that were there. And then by the time he was ready, he went to the Cardinals and earned a starting job and is now, having a successful career. Like, this guy makes careers for guys. So I think you can't put a high enough value on that, because we all know how important an offensive line is after the last 2 years. And this is a guy that can make, chicken salad out of what, right? Like, I mean, he's going to be able to take these guys and coach them up. And anybody who can do that consistently is like, I mean, it's like pixie dust for your offense, because you're going to have a good offensive line every year, and you're not going to have to invest like 10 first-round picks in trying to build that offensive line either. So I think that's an enormous benefit for the Titans. And I will say the other thing is, I love the Denard Wilson hire. He's been excellent everywhere he's gone. His defensive backs always love him. I think he's been on the track to become a defensive coordinator for a long time. And look, back-to-back seasons, his defenses, the defenses that he was the defensive backs coach for, led the NFL in sacks. And look, obviously he's not coaching the guys that are getting the sacks, but his defensive backs are helping those guys get sacks by making the quarterback hold the ball, making the quarterback, think twice, being able to disguise coverages and rotations and things like that. This guy's doing something right on a huge level, and being able to bring him in and having had him work under like the most advanced defensive brain in the NFL currently under Mike Macdonald, like, perfect home run hire. He was coveted by a bunch of other teams. Somehow they sold him on coming to Tennessee. Home run for Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon, who has a history with Denard Wilson as well. And frankly, I think I was skeptical about Rand Carthon and the comments that Amy Adams Strunk made about him being a huge advantage for them as far as being able to bring people into the organization. He's proving his worth right now, because a lot of these guys have ties to him, and they are coming to work for Rand as well as Brian Callahan. So I think I'm stock up on Rand Carthon right now.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Denard Wilson, he's worked both sides of the ball, correct? He came in as a passing game coordinator or a passing game assistant, and then moved to and that's huge for me, is just having people that have worked both sides of the ball. And then to kind of point out the age thing that you talked about first, I kind of love it, because you've got the new age guys that are in charge, but they're still learning on the fly too. So then you've got the senior guys who can come in and kind of direct them and coach them up in a way. And another thing that I like, we went from Vrabel, who was this old school mentality, who, there may or may not been a divide in the locker room. I feel like I'm leaning more towards that there was a divide in the locker room. But for me, you've got these younger guys who know how to deal with these younger players. And that's something I felt like we've been missing for a while, because the new generation of football is not what it was when Mike Vrabel was playing. And I don't feel like he was ever able to adapt to that. So you can bring in these draft picks, and Rand Carthon's the same way. I mean, he's kind of that new age style of owner, and kind of he can relate to these guys. And for me, that's huge, because it's some of the best players in the NFL are divas. I mean, it just is what it is. And you need somebody who can deal with those divas and get the best out of those guys. And I feel like you're putting a coaching staff together that's a little bit of the best of both worlds.
Yeah, man, you both touched on it a little bit, but for me, the young two guys are doing the scheming, and the older guys are doing the developing.
Yep.
And from what it sounds like, all the older coaches are kind of naturally made for developing players. And like you said, then they can kind of, the offensive coordinator, if they got some kind of question about some scheme or something like that, they just go to their positional coach who's got 20 some odd years of experience coaching in the NFL and ask them. I love it. And yeah, Rand Carthon deserves a whole lot of credit for what he's done in this and the last offseason. He really impressed me last offseason, but he's also impressed me this offseason by getting what I consider the number one head coaching hire and some decent decent coaches otherwise. I did want to touch on the Pro Bowl really quick, and then we'll kill the show. But I can't help it. I was so upset with Thursday night. I don't know if you guys watched or not, but I watched the Pro Bowl skills because I was so excited that they brought this back and also let us watch the whole thing. Last year, they summarized it really quickly, and you didn't even get to see it, barely highlights. I wouldn't even call it highlights. But the point is, they dropped the ball, man. NFL, you guys suck. Whoever's doing your theming for this is just stupid because you had me watching golf. For almost half of the time I was watching it, I was watching a golf thing. They were just trying to hit it close to the pin. It was so stupid. I got so mad. And then they were like, oh, best catch. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be sweet. No, it ain't. It's just two guys going back and forth doing jumps for YouTube video. I mean, it looked like a YouTube video. And it was upsetting to me because the only good things I got to see was the quarterbacks throwing at the targets and the snappers. That was the most entertaining part of it, and the dodgeball. But they summarized that so bad I didn't even get to see it. So, and that's really all I want to say. If you all want to add something to that, that's fine.
No, again, welcome to the new age of football. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I can remember when the NFC versus AFC, when that really meant something, and guys would go out there and they would lay it out, and we're just not at that point anymore. And I mean, these guys are having fun, and I mean, you've got a lot like Jason Kelsey. I mean, he's more than likely retiring. It's cool to see him out there long snapping balls, trying to hit a target this big. I mean, it's cool. And then Derrick Henry, I mean, if that man ever fails at football, he could be a very good professional dodgeball player. I mean, he's out there slinging them. He's out there catching. I mean, he kind of does it all. I mean, we've seen him do it with footballs, and now he's out there doing it with dodgeballs. So I know where you're coming from, and I feel like that's just a transition that we're moving to. But, yeah, I mean, I'm still going to watch, whether it's golf, whether it's long snapping, whether it's dodgeball. I mean, I just can't help myself. Football's football.
Yep.
Yeah, I get almost nothing out of the Pro Bowl stuff. Although, like, I'd rather watch probably the stuff that they're doing now than what the game itself had turned into by the end of it. When they were like, I mean, it was basically like a joke. I mean,
yeah,
it was nothing joke. Like football. Yeah. I do miss when they actually tried, but I get, nobody wants to get hurt at this point. And, people, I think guys are smarter about their careers because, look, there's a lot more money at stake too now, right? Like, I mean, those guys back then, if you were a superstar, maybe you're making like $7 or $8 million a year. Nowadays, your average, veteran is making $7 or $8 million a year, and your superstars are making $50 million a year. So there's a lot more money at stake now than there was before. If you rip an ACL trying to make a tackle, of the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, and then just the pinch hitting. I mean, we had Gardner Minshew, and my wife was like, I don't know anybody on that board. She knew who Jalen Hurts was, because he had been in the Super Bowl, and she knew who C.J. Stroud and Baker Mayfield, because I talk about Baker Mayfield a lot. But she knew who those three were. She had no idea who Tua Tagovailoa is, and that's just because she doesn't watch football and doesn't understand. But I started to question it, and I was like, man, I wonder if a lot of his is Tyreek Hill. Because, he's freakish with the wide receiver position. But anyway, I'm not going to talk about it. It was kind of fun watching him joke around. Baker getting, I think it was Tua, to stop for a minute while he was doing his passing thing. That was hilarious. It was funny to watch, Eli talk about Peyton having a giant forehead. That's fun for me. But yeah, like you said, it was kind of a joke as far as the football skills go and stuff like that. And I get it, guys don't want to hurt themselves, but I mean, you're also voted to the Pro Bowl because you're the best in the league, and we want to see you showcase just a little bit of what makes you special. You know what I mean? Like the guy, I can't even remember his name now, dang it. I even made a tweet about it when it happened because I was so impressed. But the dude doing the the punt catches.
Mm-hmm.
What was it? The guy from the Browns, I think it was. Was that?
I believe so.
It was the dude who put it like right between his legs and then caught it and went to the ground. It was so beautiful. It was so amazing. That's the kind of stuff I want to see. I know it's still a joke. Everybody was still joking around and having fun, but he took it a little more serious and actually got away with it and made a beautiful, what I consider a ESPN highlight or whatever you want, That's all I really want to say. I'll go on all night if I keep going, but Mike, thank you for joining us tonight, man. We had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Doors always open. You ever want to come back? We really enjoyed having you. You're great on the show. You're easy to talk to, so I like that. Thank you. Thank you from all of our fans for coming on our show.
Happy to do it.
Really appreciate you. Tell
Thanks
everybody where they can find you at, man.
Yeah, so on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it now, at Mike Herndon NFL, and then at paulkowarski.com for all my written work there.
Right on, man. And everybody should know, if you don't know, follow us, Titans Global Podcast, pretty much everywhere you get your social media. YouTube's where we want you to go, though. Like and subscribe. That really helps us out the most. And if you want to follow me or Link, you can follow us both each on TikTok, Twitter or YouTube. My Lord, I can't talk tonight. Twitter or Facebook. I'm Maximus Titan fan on both. He's Link Rogers on both. Thank you for joining us tonight. Any final thoughts, guys?
No, I'm good. Just to reiterate what you said, Mike, it was great talking to you, man. Love having you on the show. Look forward to reading more articles, seeing more content on the podcast. So keep doing what you're doing, man. Doing a great job.
No doubt. I appreciate you guys.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. Well, that's another one down. Everybody tighten up. Peace out.
Up.